Good afternoon, Louisiana, and welcome to Bayou Bets for Monday, August the 8th. I'm Zach Ewing with Spencer the Guru Urquhart and Jim Derry here on this fine, rainy afternoon. Will we ever have a day in which it does not rain for the rest of the year? It doesn't seem like it.
How long have you've lived in Louisiana? Like 5 years now.
It's like 20 days in a row, man. It's never been this bad.
It's the summer. It's supposed to rain.
Although
it beats 98 degrees.
I will say this. If it keeps us, and I'm knocking on wood, from having any major storms,
Don't say it.
Rain every single day. Every single day.
You're not supposed to say it.
But I seriously, I didn't mow my grass when it was soaking wet. It was not good. Not a good situation. But
today
we're here.
Well, I mean, it could be worse. I mean, for us old folks. And hello there, sir. Thanks for joining us again,
Jerry.
It's a sad day for us old folks. Olivia Newton-John and Roger Mosley both died on the same day. I mean, it is a rainy day, isn't it? I'm old enough I saw Grease in the theater.
And Jerry, oh my God, Jim, you are old. You're talking about the old one too, aren't you?
The old one? Yeah. There's more than one?
Isn't there a new one? Hey, Marcus, how are you? Jerry, by the way, leads us right into why this really is a rainy day, potentially. Jameis Winston left Saints camp this morning with a tweak, quote unquote, quoting Coach Dennis Allen, in his foot. We don't know any other information. Nobody knows anything other than that. He left kind of quietly, apparently left under his own power. It could be anything from he's right back out there tomorrow to he's got feet injuries are nothing to mess around with. They can keep you out a while.
Feet injuries?
Foot injuries, feet injuries.
Yeah, I think it would be foot injuries.
No, hopefully it's nothing too bad. Yeah, foot injury. I mean, we saw with Derrick Henry last year, man, foot injuries can really be bad, but hopefully it's nothing serious. Hopefully no breaks or anything where he can be back for week one. Glad it happened now and not like, during the season. So hopefully this is no more injuries for Jameis, man. He's gotta stay healthy.
Don't worry, the red rifle's around.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
I will be worried if we end up having to start the red rifle.
But guys, I mean, seriously, compare the red rifle to what the backup options were.
Oh, it's not even close. Don't even get me started. It's not even.
Better. It's much.
It's better. Not even close. It's way better.
So if now you don't want Andy Dalton starting 17 games, no. But if he starts 2 games, 3 games because Jameis gets banged up here or there. You don't want Jameis to be less than 100%. Andy Dalton can win games in the NFL. He's not Trevor Siemian. I know that's a bad word.
Don't say it. You said it. Hurricane and Trevor Siemian in the same show. We're not even 5 minutes in.
Somebody look up Hurricane names and tell me if Hurricane Trevor is on the list.
Killing me, Smalls.
In the meantime, we are brought to you here at Bayou Bets by the Caesar Sportsbook. If you have not signed up, you can do so today. Get our special offer, a $1,500 risk-free bet with your first deposit. Go to NOLA.com/Caesars or use promo code NOLA15 for that special offer. Got a lot to get to. We had real life football last Thursday, the Hall of Fame game, the first preseason game. A full slate coming this weekend, including the Saints playing against the Houston Texans. We're going to wrap up our NFC West previews with the Seahawks, who we didn't get to on Thursday. We're going to talk a little AFC North. That's the next division. And then also coming up here in just about 5 minutes, we have Steve Tasker, a Buffalo Bills broadcaster, and you may remember him as a former wide receiver, kind of special teams ace for the Bills. He is going to be on the show at 4:10 to talk some Bills with us, talk some AFC and some playoffs and all of those sorts of things. He was on those great Bills Super Bowl teams of the 90s. So excited to talk to Steve Tasker. So full show. We'll do some college football and some Major League Baseball.
Scott Norwood?
Probably not. Probably not.
I
mean, you can if you want, Jim. But we want him in a good mood for us.
Yeah, don't make him leave on us.
All right. I won't bring it up.
The Saints preseason game, as I mentioned, is on Saturday night. It's on Fox 8 New Orleans. It's WAFB in Baton Rouge. I apologize. I didn't look up Lafayette, but if someone knows, put it in the comments, and I will put it up there. Saints are 1.5-point favorites, a typically low preseason spread of 33.5. Honestly, I was going to ask what to watch for, but I think the thing to watch for would be if Jameis Winston kind of gets his customary series here for the starters, then he's okay. That's one thing to watch.
I doubt it. I mean, I don't think he would have played even if
it's possible not.
I mean, I don't think they're going to risk that. I think you'll see him at some point in the preseason if he's healthy enough, but I mean, they're not going to risk that. I mean, he may get a courtesy. I mean, the way it was going, even at the end of Drew Brees' career, I don't think he played the last preseason he was here at all. I don't think he played a single down. So I would be surprised if you see any Jameis.
Well, and not only that, but I guess the other question would be how much Andy Dalton do you want to see if you think you may need to start the season with Andy Dalton?
Yeah, a series or two.
Ian Book will be the guy, I think.
Well, a lot of Ian Book. A lot of Ian Book, I bet.
Yep.
Hopefully better than last year because he's still a guy that's there. I mean, hopefully he can have learned and another year and under the system and can show a little something. I know a lot of times they make fun of him, but I mean he's somebody that he's organizational depth. You want him to at least be competent.
Yeah, we talk about this all the time that these are exhibition games for the coaches and players, but there's no such thing as an exhibition bet. So is there any lean here for you guys? A lot of times in the preseason, I like to play the team that's favored just because these games tend to be so close and hard to predict that somebody somewhere has a reason to favor one of the teams over the other. So why not? Am I off base with that?
I would say why more than why not. I mean, you got to be a true degenerate. Now, granted, you get to do best bets for that day, so I don't have to worry about it. But I'm not into – there are certain things I will bet for preseason, like the Ravens for some reason, who we're going to talk about in a little bit probably. But the Ravens for some reason, they go gangbusters in the preseason. John Harbaugh loves to – he's like old – yeah, he's like old school. And they used to preseason actually used to semi-matter because the fans would get really – they used to play 6 back when I was a little kid.
Is that when Grease came out or before that?
Grease came out in 78. They stopped doing 6 preseason games after the 77 season. So,
very close. Yeah.
Yeah, real close. But preseason used to matter a little bit more. And in fact, I think as recently as maybe 15, 20 years ago, you would see the starters play more and more by the third preseason. Now, they wouldn't play at all in the fourth game usually. But in the third preseason game, the starters would go into well into the third quarter. And they don't do that anymore. They just don't want to take any chances at all. And I don't think it'll be too long. Spencer will probably be by the time Spencer's my age, I think there will be no preseason whatsoever, maybe even before that.
I could see doing one just because to figure out those last few roster spots, it can be helpful. But boy, it does seem like it's gone the way of the dinosaur.
They're going to have an 18-game regular season before too long, and when they do, it'll be interesting.
2. I think it'll just be 2.
Well, I don't know if they'll do 2. They may not even do 2. I think they may not do. They may do glorified scrimmages or something along those lines. They were talking about if they do an 18-game schedule, the players wanted to get rid of preseason altogether. So that's a possibility.
Yeah, let's do a 7-on-7 tournament.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. James is here from Chicago. He says, "Who dat fan since the Bobby Bear days?" Look, Steve Tasker's going to be on in a few minutes. We'll ask his opinion of the Saints as well as, of course, talk to him about the Buffalo Bills. In the meantime, we wrapped up our NFC West previews late last week and today. And the one team we didn't talk about in Thursday's show was the Seattle Seahawks. Not a whole lot to get excited about here.
No, I mean,
not at all.
Yeah, go ahead, Spence. You can talk about if you want to try to the fantasy perspective of the Seahawks, besides DK Metcalf and Lockett, go for it.
Yeah, they actually had the rookie running back has some promise. I feel like Kenneth Walker, because he's not going to start right away with Rashad Penny, but Rashad Penny, one of the most injury-prone running backs in the game. So I feel like once he suffers his inevitable injury, then Kenneth Walker could actually have some value there because Pete Carroll's old school. They love to run the ball. But, yeah, just overall, though, not a whole lot to like there. They're clearly in rebuilding mode, pretty much just tanking for that 2023 quarterback because their quarterback, they have by far the worst QB situation in the NFL.
You can't win in the NFL with a Mizzou quarterback. I'm sorry.
That's uncalled for, man.
Drew Lock
shots fired on a random Monday? I was not even – I didn't even have my arm on for that one, man.
Chase Daniel.
I didn't even have my arm on for that one.
Why the hate?
No hate. Chase, fine if he's your backup.
Brad Smith became one hell of an NFL kick returner.
Brad Smith was a quarterback until he got to the NFL, and they realized
that's right.
This
and
dude's
he was
way better. Yeah, he was
a great kick returner.
I agree.
He had several returns.
Just don't have him as your quarterback.
Well, you could trick plays. I think he threw a touchdown pass here or there and a trick play.
Drew Lock can throw it real far. We just don't know what's going to happen when he throws it.
That's right. Which uniform may be trouble. In fact, they open up against the Broncos, which is Drew Lock's old team, and of course Russell Wilson.
That's real funny. Yeah.
Drew Lock may need to figure out which jersey he's throwing to.
Yeah, really.
Starting that one. So here's your NFC West odds. Obviously, the Seahawks are the one that does not look like the others here. 18-1 even to win this division. Very well might be the worst team in football. But other than that, a very competitive division, Jim.
There's no way they're worse than Atlanta. I mean, they're definitely better than Atlanta. I mean, just DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett and Noah Fant and that's better than what Atlanta has, and their defense is better than Atlanta's as well. But still, I mean, even at 18-1, you're always looking for value. There just isn't any here. Those other three teams are so much better than them. I mean, this would be more shocking than the Bengals going to the Super Bowl last year. I mean, obviously we get shocking things that happen, but usually you don't get two monsters in a row. I mean, the Bengals, frankly, were a monster but even then, I mean, you go into the season, I mean, Joe Burrow, we didn't know what Chase was going to do. They still have Joe Mixon. I mean, and the defense was good enough. Obviously, they had offensive line issues that they hopefully corrected going into the season. But, I mean, the Seattle Seahawks are just, man, you can't touch any of those numbers. I like the under at 6. I still like the under, but I'm not going to play it. I think it's just a stay-away team for me. And I think they go 0-6 in division play.
Yeah, it's hard to – I mean, you talk about taking a flyer on a bomb like you hit on the Bengals to win the AFC last year. You got to have a reason, though. I mean, we talked about the Giants.
Well, and I didn't bet that until October when I saw that Burrow was okay from the injury. Jamar Chase was catching things. He was dropping balls in the preseason. It was fine. So I didn't bet that till like week 5 or 6. So – look, if you want to look at the Seahawks, and I don't think their odds going to change all that much unless they got out some weird super start, which I don't think is going to happen. But you'll still get good odds on them later. There's absolutely zero reason to bet anything on the Seattle Seahawks right now.
I mean, one thing about them is they play Monday Night Football right out of the gate with that return for Russell Wilson. Well, not a return to Seattle because the game's in Denver, but he's playing his old team. And if they get throttled in that game, if it's a 31-10 or something. Look, I think that number could go up.
Yeah, I don't think they'll get blown out in that game. I think that's going to be a low-scoring kind of fight kind of game. But it could go up. But, yeah, there's just no reason to play it. Their schedule is a little bit easier the first couple of weeks than some of the rest of the division. But, look, when you got to play the Rams and the Niners twice and Arizona, I mean, maybe they can pull one out against Arizona. I don't know. But the NFC West overall has a fairly tough schedule. So it's and then you talk about the AFC West in general is tough.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We are waiting on Steve Tasker to join us. In the meantime, I want to take a quick preview at the division that we're previewing next on bet.NOLA.com, and that is the AFC North. And you talk about competitive divisions. I don't know that the AFC North is the best division in football. It may be the most balanced, though, Jim.
I agree. I think wholeheartedly from top to – and it not just because it was last year. I think it's a very similar thing. I don't want to give any spoiler alerts out. We start with the Ravens tomorrow. Every team has big question marks, some bigger than others. One team in this division has a bigger question mark than any other in the NFL, I think. But when you talk about the Ravens, Lamar was kind of running for his life last year. And now they lose Hollywood Brown. I'm not so sure about his other receiving options. I mean, to me, when your best receiving option is probably your tight end. I mean, Mark Andrews is a great tight end, and Spencer could talk more to this than me. But I'm not sure J.K. Dobbins. He's just coming back off the ACL injury, just got taken off the PUP list, and their defense was ranked, I think, 25th last season, and what did they do to get much better? Well, they go get Marcus Williams. That's your big offseason signing. I mean, I'm not real sure about the Ravens, so we'll get to them tomorrow. But the Bengals are an interesting story. Can they follow up on what they did? They shored up their offensive line immensely with Lyle Collins from Dallas. They signed the Patriots center and the Bucks right tackle, excuse me. So they have the Bengals seem to have solved their problems. Is that enough to push them over the top? Can they be competitive every week with the Kansas Cities of the world and the Bills? Just because they beat Kansas City last year doesn't mean that they're better than them. We'll see. Maybe they're on their level now. And then you talk about Cleveland. I mean, geez. I mean, we don't know what's going to be up with Deshaun Watson. And will it affect the rest of the team that lingering on? They have an easy schedule their first 5 or 6 weeks. So the Browns are looking to get off a good start. They're going to have to do it with Jacoby Brissett. And then the Steelers, bet against Mike Tomlin at your own peril. But it's going to be tough this year with Mitch Trubisky back there. And I don't know.
Yeah, I don't really want to bet against Mike Tomlin. I don't know that I want to bet.
Just don't bet on right. Exactly.
But I should mention, and Steve Tasker's here, and so we'll get to him in a second. I do want to mention, as we're talking about the AFC North, our Bayou Bets odds boost at Caesar Sportsbook for today only. This just goes to midnight tonight, Monday. So if you want to get it, go bet it. Joe Burrow to win the MVP. The LSU boy did so well last year. Boosted up to 14-1. It's not a huge boost, but it is something. It's a bigger number that you can get anywhere else. So if you're interested in a Joe Burrow to win MVP bet, today is the day to do it. Get him at 14-1. And with that said, let's bring on Steve Tasker to the show. And Steve is a Buffalo Bills broadcaster, of course, a former player, wide receiver for the Bills. Steve, welcome.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it.
And he's here from Buffalo. And I think the first thing I really want to do, Steve, if we can, is just ask you some of your memories of playing in New Orleans, playing the Saints. I know the Bills didn't come down here a ton, but a couple times during your career, and what that was like, how you remember it.
Yeah, it's a fun town to go to. Great stadium. I mean, it's one of the most iconic stadiums in the league. I mean, the thing's enormous. I was a part of the crew that broadcast Super Bowl 42 when the lights went out. I was part of that crew that went down there. Still, it's a fantastic stadium. When we played down there, I remember it was a big game for us. We actually beat the Saints, and nobody thought we were going to be able to beat the Saints on the day that we played them. That's the famous – here in Buffalo, it's famous because Jim Kelly, after the game, said, "You're a liar, you're a liar, you're a liar, you're a liar," telling all the media guys who told him that they thought they could – asked them who thought we could beat the Saints that day, and they all said, yeah, and he said, "You're a liar, you're a liar." He went down the list. So a lot of fun stuff that happened in New Orleans, and I remember also, on a personal note, I busted my arm in that game, so there you go.
The Superdome turf claims another victim.
I was there, Steve. I remember it. I was in Saints garb and wasn't very happy that day. That was quite a team. I have a confession to make, by the way, with you here. AFC playoff game against the Houston Oilers. I think it was 35-3, and I had the Saints were coming on right after you guys. I had to go to the store, so I'm like, yeah, this game's over. I'm gonna go to the store. I'll run to the store, and somebody in the store says, "Hey, it's 35-24. I had to rush home. I got home just in time to see the fantastic finish. What was the craziness of the greatest comeback in NFL history?
Yeah, we got to 35-24. Actually, we got 35-17. We scored twice, and it happened so fast in that third quarter. I mean, we came out. There were 3 touchdowns down. We threw a pick six on like the first third down of this third quarter. And they run it back in, kick it off to us, and we go down and score. And it was 35-10. Then we scored again pretty quick. It was because we got a surprise onside. Scored again real quick after the first score, and it was 35-17. And people then started thinking, okay, now 35, and they started looking at the scoreboard, trying to figure out how many points we were going to need to get back in it. And 35-24 happened right then. And from that moment on, the 35-24, it got really interesting because the momentum was there. There was a lot of time left in the third quarter, let alone the second half. And the Oilers had shut it off. You could feel it. They were just trying to get out of that game. And, we're a team that had a lot of pride. We'd been to 2 Super Bowls already. We lost both of them, but we'd been to 2 Super Bowls already. So we had a lot of pride in the locker room. So we just started playing hard, and we got a little lucky as well, and ended up winning that game in overtime. You could feel it, though. You could feel it turn early in the third quarter, and the Oilers were just trying to get out of there, and they never were able to really turn it back on for any length of time, and we took them.
And Steve, something about Frank Reich, it was just kind of, there was this belief around him. I don't know what it is, and even him as a coach today, I find interesting, but there's something about that guy. It seems like everybody just kind of rallies around him.
Yeah, he's a leader. He's an extremely intelligent guy, great leader, smart guy, a great friend, teammate. He's not one of those weirdo, really smart guys who's nobody can relate to. He's a great locker room guy, but he's also really intelligent. And guys do this all the time now. They see their teammates and stuff and say, that guy's going to be a head coach, or that guy's going to be a head coach. It used to be a favorite pastime of players, because it used to be only players would go into NFL coaching. Now it's a profession that guys get into whether they play football or not. But back then, you kind of tab guys that were in line to be a coach. And Frank was one of those guys for our team. A lot of us really believed that someday he would be exactly where he is now, a head coach in the NFL.
The only regret I think from that game is that live betting was not readily available. Because
wow, can you imagine?
No,
can you imagine?
You got the Bills at plus 24.
It would have been the old tabs that roll in an old train station, right?
Just changing every second.
Yeah.
Imagine what the money line would have been.
Are you
no
kidding? Unbelievable. Yeah, unbelievable. But yeah, you're right. It would have been absolute insanity on a day like that.
Well, let's talk about this year's Bills team, Steve, because if you look at what the odds makers say, they are, bar none, expected to be the best team in the NFL. They have the highest win total, the lowest Super Bowl odds, a heavy favorite to win the AFC East again. The sense you get there in Western New York, obviously there's a lot of hype, and this team has been to the playoffs the last couple of years and not quite gotten to the promised land. Do you see this as being a team capable of doing that?
Yeah, the problem is when you get to that end of that, you've got to play well on that day. They were good enough really 2 years ago when the Chiefs beat them by 2 touchdowns in the AFC Championship game. They were good enough then. In that game, the AFC Championship game, I'll contend even now, the Bills played the worst game they played in the 2 months leading up to that game. And the Chiefs played their best game of the season on that day. And it was a 2-touchdown win for the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. Then last year, of course, we all saw that game in 13 seconds. When you get to that point of the NFL season, you got to play well on that day, because any team you're playing, whether it's the Bengals, the Rams, the Chiefs, the Bills, the Packers, if the 49ers, you pick it, and those teams are going to be ready to play. And it's whoever plays best on that day. And even in those certain drives or those certain instances, those certain situations on the game. So the Bills have been good enough for 2 years already to be a contender. They're right up there with the Green Bays, who are always in it. The Rams, who are going to be in it. The Chiefs, who are going to be in it. They're one of those teams. But it's a long way from September to February, where who's going to be available, who's going to be hurt, who's going to be there at the end of the season. The Bills entered the season into the playoffs last year, except for Tre'Davious White, their great cornerback. They were as healthy and sharp and fresh as any team in the league. Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane have a real knack for getting their team primed for a playoff run. We'll see if they can do it this year, but they've earned these expectations. They're in familiar territory. They had high expectations a year ago. And so the expectations they're more a superstitious kind of chilling effect for the fans. The fans don't want to be the favorite, right? They want to be Buffalo. They want to be the underdog, right? No such luck. This is a team that deserves all the high expectations. They're really good. They're really deep. They're really talented. And I think Von Miller and guys like that are the final cherry on top of the cake that gives people the faith that this might be their year.
And I think,
go ahead,
Jim.
Jack.
I'm sorry, just one follow-up to that. You mentioned the 13 seconds, Steve. The 13 seconds away from beating the Chiefs. Obviously, they would have had to win another game after that. They would have had to beat the Bengals to get to the Super Bowl. This is a pretty veteran team at this point. Any worry about a hangover from those 13 seconds and being that close, or is that a thing of the past at this point?
No, I think it's a lesson learned. I think they learned some things from it. I think, you go back 2 years in the 2020 season, the COVID season, where they lost or maybe it was a 2019 season where they lost on the Hail Murray in Arizona. What gets lost in that is the fantastic job Josh Allen did to go down and take the lead in a game that was hard fought. They had a fantastic last drive offensively, and then it took a luck chuck down to the end zone to DeAndre Hopkins to win that game for the Cardinals. They learned something from that. They learned something from the tough time they had in the AFC Championship in that season. They learned something from that 13 seconds. They learned something from an overtime loss last year to Tom Brady. The GM, the head coach, learned something from the only game they lost badly last year was to the Indianapolis Colts, 41-something. The Colts came in, a chip on their shoulder from getting put out of the playoffs the year before by the Bills, and they rolled the Bills up. The only team that's done that in 3 years, for my money, were the Colts last year. So they've learned lessons, and that 13 seconds is going to go a long way towards it being that much more difficult for a Bills opponent to get themselves off the hook, because the Bills are going to set the hook in a lot of teams. They're going to be a tough out, and it's going to be harder as these years pass and all these hard lessons have been learned. It's going to be harder for teams to get themselves out of a tough spot when they're facing this Bills team. So it was a hard lesson learned, that 13 seconds, but it's going to serve them well perhaps in the future.
For sure. And I know there's a lot of new weapons in town this year, and and then the young guys have been hearing a lot of good reports out of camp about Gabriel Davis and Isaiah McKenzie. Yeah, I'm a fantasy football enthusiast. That's why they call me the guru. I'm real into that kind of stuff. So I want to get your thoughts on Davis and McKenzie. Do you feel like they're going to live up to the hype and really break out as those second and third options next to Diggs?
Yeah, I think so. I think Davis is going to be on the field. He's the number 2, so he's going to be on the field all the time. He worked himself up ahead of Emmanuel Sanders at the end of last half of last season. He took over for Emmanuel Sanders as the number 2, and of course he bloomed in that Kansas City game with 4 TDs. I think if Gabe Davis doesn't have a multitude of catches, I do think he'll have a disproportionate amount of touchdowns. That seems to be the way it goes for him. He's a great weapon away from Diggs. Diggs is going to continue to be stellar and is going to draw some attention. Gabe Davis has a knack for being open when Allen needs him. Josh trusts him. McKenzie as well. I think right now the slot position is Isaiah McKenzie's to lose. Now, Jamison Crowder, who was out for the first week of camp, is working his way back in, had a pulled calf. So it remains to be seen how effective and how well he's going to get back in there, and whether Crowder can really push McKenzie off the field. There's a couple of things going on there, because McKenzie is still, I think, their number 1 option as a return guy, except that Marquez Stevenson just got his foot hurt, who might have been the return guy, which that means leaves a vacancy there. And if they want to plug McKenzie into the return role and then just move Crowder into the slot so McKenzie can do one or the other, that's one thing. But for right now, McKenzie is the slot guy, and I think it'll stay that way for the foreseeable future, at least through this first couple of weeks of the preseason. Crowder could wrench that slot away from him, but he's going to have to play well to get it. McKenzie has played well for this club over the last 2 years. He got a game in the last part of 2020, I believe, 2020, where he absolutely dismantled the Dolphins. And then also last year when he dismantled the Patriots in Foxborough. So every time McKenzie's been on the field as a slot, he's done well. But Jamison Crowder has played well against the Bills as a member of the Jets. So both those things give both those guys a dose of credibility with the coaching staff as to how good they can play. I think it's a battle, but right now McKenzie's got the edge.
Steve, how does this team feel? How does the feel compare to when you were playing with the Bills, late 80s, early 90s, and 4 straight Super Bowls? You know, my 24-year-old son, it's common now. He's become a huge Bills fan. He has a Josh Allen jersey. He thinks Josh Allen's the greatest thing since sliced bread. And you see that everywhere. I mean, you know, back in your day, Jim Kelly and Thurman Thomas and everybody loved those guys. How does the field compare to back then?
You know, it almost feels bigger, even though that was a team that was going to the Super Bowl every year and they were on Monday Night Football. This team will be that way this year. It'll be on Monday night, 5 primetime games and all of that. I think it feels bigger now because of social media and the fact that the NFL is actually an even bigger presence than it was 30 years ago in the 90s when we were playing. I think social media and the attention and the 800-pound gorilla that the NFL has grown into, even bigger than it was then, makes it a little more exciting now. I mean, it's easier to interact with fans of your team, and that the NFL is just omnipresent everywhere. It was big, particularly even for us players, obviously, because we were living in it. But it's bigger now and more. It grabs more interest now, and fans can have that appetite quenched more now with social media and all the media outlets that are available than they were that back then. So I think it even seems more exciting now, and the expectations and everything is out there. If you want to find out something about any team, man, it's a click away on your phone, and that makes today's NFL just that much a bigger part of our lives. And I think for that reason, I think it's more exciting, and the buildup is even greater than it was back then.
Obviously, two different kinds of quarterbacks, but how do you compare Jim Kelly and Josh Allen?
Yeah, you're right. Jim was a hard-nosed, tough leader who was a warrior, kind of a tough, accurate passer, stand in the pocket, take a hit, make the play, always wanted to win. Didn't care whether he threw it or whether he handed it off to win. Didn't care one or the other. He just wanted to win, would do whatever it took, and he called the own plays. He called us 50-50 run pass right down the stretch, and was a first ballot Hall of Famer for that reason. Jim came into the Bills, and I'll argue even to this day, no player in the history of the National Football League arrived at an NFL team with higher expectations and a bigger weight on his shoulders than Jim Kelly arrived in Buffalo, and he ended up being a first ballot Hall of Famer. Josh was really polarizing when he arrived in Buffalo. You loved him, you hated him, you thought he was going to be great, you thought he was going to be a disaster, and he earned it on his own with his leadership, with the kind of guy he is, and obviously with the way he has played and been in the MVP conversation a couple of times. So they're a little different that way. Both are great quarterbacks. Both have strong arms. But Josh, in today's NFL, is everything you need. I mean, he's an athlete who can take it, tuck it under his arm, and run. He's one of the best, if not the best, short yardage back in the NFL, just because he's got the ball in his hands all the time, and he's nifty with it in his hands. He's not just a stiff. So Josh has an element to his game that you need in today's NFL that Jim never had a use for. So both of them are great quarterbacks. Both of them play at an extremely high level. And I know Bills fans love both of them.
Yeah, man, I know the backfield is the Allen there. It takes away a lot of the goal line carries. But I guess my question for you would be, like, which running back do you expect to shoulder the majority of the load? Because I know Singletary and Moss are back, but then you got the rookie James Cook in town now, who's looking intriguing.
Well, it's hard to tell the future. But I think Singletary is going to start the season and get the lion's share of the carries. But as this season rolls along, that could evolve, and it could evolve quickly. Just like Gabe Davis in the middle of the season took over the number 2 wide receiver spot, I can really easily see James Cook rolling into, and at the end of the season, becoming the number 1 guy for Buffalo, both in the run game and the pass game. Certainly in the pass game, he's way better than what they have had in the past. He's got the ability to split out wide and win a physical matchup with a nickelback or a third or fourth corner. He can get open and be an option in the passing game. In between the tackles, if you hand it to him, he's big enough and has enough instincts to get it in there and run off tackle. And, of course, with the wide zone reads as well. The guy's great. So even though it won't start out with, I think, James Cook being the number 1 guy, it's easy to formulate and come up with a scenario where you can see James Cook slowly but surely taking more and more snaps away from Devin Singletary, Zach Moss, and even Duke Johnson.
Well, speaking of sort of foretelling the future, Steve, we'll put you on the spot here, and obviously the Bills are the Super Bowl favorites. Give us a team in each conference, an AFC team, an NFC team, that you could see surprising and making a run. Maybe not quite as big of a surprise as the Bengals were last year, although it could be. But which teams do you have your eye on?
Well, I think the Ravens are going to be really interesting. They were nicked up bad last year. They've got Lamar Jackson, who's going to come back with a vengeance. He's playing for a new contract. They're also one of those teams that is a real problem for NFL teams that are built to beat everybody. If you're going to beat everybody in the NFL, everybody throws the football all over the yard. The Ravens don't. you got to put your big boy pads on and have a plan against their running game and Lamar Jackson's elite speed. The Ravens are a problem offensively for teams defensively. They're a tough matchup because they're completely different than any other offense. And when you get into those kind of games where, you know, you're going to try and prepare for the 15 teams that you play, 16 teams that you play, and the Ravens are the 17th. Well, you know, if they give us problems, we'll kind of do what we can do on that week. Even in their division, you might do some things knowing that you got 2 games against them. But even so, you're lining up to play 15 teams in the league. You got to bear up and try and beat the biggest majority of those. That means you have coverage linebackers, you got pass rushers, you don't have big defensive tackles, you don't have big 255-pound inside linebackers, you don't have guys that can bear up in the run game. You're built to cover the pass and play in space. I think for that reason, the Ravens have a real edge on a lot of teams. They're able to play big boy football and throw it just well enough that in a league like this, they can catch some teams in mismatches that they are just not ready for and don't have the roster to beat. They don't have the roster to beat the Ravens in that kind of game. So I think the Ravens are a real interesting team. I don't think Lamar Jackson is going to throw for 5,000 yards, but if he throws for 3,500, 3,700, 3,800 yards, the Ravens are going to be a tough out. They're really going to be a tough out.
All right. And then how about an NFC team? Anybody catch your eye over there?
Yeah, I think the NFC, to me, it starts with the Rams. It starts with the Packers. It starts with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And there is a big gap from those 3 down through the rest. You might say the 49ers, okay, maybe. Dallas, okay. They've got a division that they may be able to breeze through again. But I'm telling you what, I think it starts with those big 3, Tampa Bay, Green Bay, and the Rams. And I think the distance between number 3 and number 4 is just a little too much this season.
Okay. And before we let you go, Steve, we'll ask you kind of from afar your thoughts on the New Orleans Saints. A very good defense last year. You saw them up close on Thanksgiving. That was not the full New Orleans team, obviously.
Right.
Very much injury-riddled season.
Yeah,
what do you think if they could stay healthy this year?
Yeah, if they stay healthy, I think Jameis was playing better than we've ever seen him play last year. I think that's still in there. He rolled his ankle today in practice, and I'm not going to get too wrapped up in that. He'll, I hope it's not bad. But if Jameis Winston comes back and plays 100%, I like him. He's got a live, strong arm. He's courageous with the football. And last year, remember, before he went away, he had really, really improved his ability to stay away from the big mistake. That's what his bugaboo was in Tampa Bay. That's why he's still not a Tampa Bay Buccaneer. And I think they're a really intriguing team. Dennis Allen has been around the block once as a head coach out in Oakland for the Raiders. I think this time around, having sat there and watched Sean Payton do his thing, I think Dennis Allen is the right guy for the job. I like the Saints, particularly even in that division. They're one team who has consistently given Tampa Bay fits. And if there's a team that's going to be a surprise division winner, I don't think there's any question it could be the Saints.
Echoing our thoughts a lot over here. Trying not to be biased, but optimistic down here on the Bayou. So Steve Tasker, MSG broadcaster in Western New York, and almost said MSY, but that's the New Orleans airport. MSG, other part of the country. Steve Tasker of the Buffalo Bills. We appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, that was great. Glad to have Steve on. And
I think that's the best. I mean, no offense to anyone, and I love Adam for what he brings to us, but as far as like experience and knowing what his surroundings and what he covers and where just the experience he had as a player, I think that was one of the greatest interviews that we've had in the first year of this show. I thought that was fantastic.
No, that was great, and our thanks to Steve Tasker and to Caesar Sportsbook for hooking that up. And hey, you never know, down the road, Bills almost certainly going to be in the playoffs. We look at their odds. I think they're like minus 400 to make the playoffs. Saints could get there. Maybe we get Steve Tasker back on down the road. You are watching Bayou Bets on bet.NOLA.com, and Zach Ewing with Jim Derry and Spencer the Guru here. We'll wrap the show up with a couple of other things. By the way, a couple of reports out there that the Jameis Winston injury not expected to be serious. So still no official word, but that's what I'm seeing out on the Twitterverse. So hopefully that is the case, and we'll know more when we're back with you for the fantasy roundup tomorrow and for Bayou Bets on Thursday as well. And,
Zach, the only injury you really walk off the field under your own power and it's serious and is an ACL injury. So I mean, if you can walk off the field under your own power without a noticeable limp or anything like that, then you're probably okay. 9 times out of 10.
As Spencer mentioned, August the 8th is when you take super precautionary measures on this stuff. If he doesn't feel right, get him off the field, get him checked out. If it's September 8th, he probably stays in practice, because they've got a game in 3 days and it's important and all of those.
Spencer's going to go draft the red rifle now. It's all right.
oh hell no!
Only in a super flex league.
A
4-quarterback league.
Yeah.
A reminder, by the way, speaking of quarterbacks, if you want to bet Joe Burrow to win the MVP, if that's something maybe you had on your plate anyway, today's the day to do it. Only until midnight tonight. The bet.NOLA.com Bayou Bets boost on Caesar Sportsbook. Look for our bet.NOLA.com logo boosted to 14-1 just for today. So get on that. The other news from this morning, guys, the coaches poll, the USA Today coaches poll comes out for college football. LSU not ranked for the first time since 2000, I think it is.
Or should they be?
No, I mean, I'm not saying they should, but it is a new era for sure for LSU football. Here are the top 10 teams plus a couple of interesting ones with their odds. And as is always the case, the rankings do not always match up with the odds. Notre Dame and Michigan, 5 and 6 in the country, they have the same national championship odds as LSU does, 50-1. And then you see further on down the list, USC's 22-1. They're only number 15 in the country. Texas got the number of parentheses as first place votes. Texas got a freaking first place vote, and they're 18th in the country.
That person should be stripped of his vote or her vote.
I mean, again, it's the coaches poll. Steve Spurrier used to give Duke a vote every year when they were terrible. I mean, stuff happens. It's the preseason poll, but it is interesting to look at.
I find Notre Dame highly interesting. Are they going to have? They might. You want to talk about? We always talk about players that play with chips on their shoulders. Notre Dame might play as a team with a chip on their shoulder. Losing Brian Kelly and having a longtime assistant come in and be the head coach there. I think that's a really good number because we've kind of talked about it before. If they can find a way to get Notre Dame in the playoff, they're going to. So really, you get a decent shot at them to get in there because they're going to have a better chance than a lot of other teams to get in because they're Notre Dame and they drive ratings. So I think at that number, I'm not saying they're going to win the national championship, but at 50-1, I think that might be a good value. And I know we talked about Utah and teams like that, but I like that team to have a potential shot to get in there.
I mean, it's the same number as LSU. And I mean, no offense to LSU, but Notre Dame's got a better chance of getting there than LSU does.
No doubt.
There's no doubt about that. Now, I will say this about Notre Dame. They've gotten to the playoffs the past couple of times under Brian Kelly with a fairly soft schedule. I mean, not soft, but not SEC West. But this year, Notre Dame opens at Ohio State, which maybe the good part about that is it's the opener. You can lose that game and still recover and make the playoff. But they also have to play at BYU, which is not an easy game. They play Clemson in Notre Dame, and end of the year they play at USC. So they're playing legitimately tough games where usually you can't get into the playoff with 2 losses. It depends on how everything else works out. But it's tough to say.
I mean, that could really work in their favor, though, too.
Yeah, between Ohio State, Clemson, USC, throw BYU in there maybe. You see a couple losses real easy when you look at Notre Dame.
For sure. But, I mean, again, you talk about it, and though that could be – you look at it now as a negative because it's not as easy, but if you go through and you say you just lose to – Ohio State and you beat everybody else. I mean, then you're a clear cut in, and depending on how the rest. So I like those odds, and I certainly don't understand a Clemson at 10-1. I don't get why. I mean, I know they're Clemson, but 10-1. I mean, come on. We talked about Utah, how we liked Utah and their chances, and Texas A&M at 25-1. Hey, you upset on Alabama on any given day like Johnny Football did, and who knows.
I mean, I will say this about Clemson. That's about 3 times better price than you could get them at any point in the last 5 years. So If you think DJ Uiagalelei is the answer, or they have another answer at quarterback, maybe.
Glad I don't have to do play-by-play for that one.
They get into the playoff. I don't know. I mean, the other thing is, you know, Jim, if Notre Dame opens with Ohio State, let's say they spring an upset. Ohio State's not ready for Marcus Freeman's defense or something. 50-1 becomes 10-1.
That's right.
Real quick if they win that game. Real quick. So if you believe in Notre Dame, you need to get them now.
And you put $10 on. I mean, come on, $10 gets you 500, and you could say you look like a genius. You don't have to credit us. Just say, I knew Notre Dame was going to win all along. You just look like a genius.
Yeah, no doubt about that. All right, we'll wrap the show up here on this Monday with a little baseball talk. Spencer, you wrote the betting recap for MLB that's up on bet.NOLA.com this morning. It was a monumental week in a lot of ways. I mean, the Cardinals swept the week. That NL Central looked like it looked like it was going to come down to the wire between the Brewers and the Cardinals, and maybe it still does. But the Cardinals clearly have a leg up now, and the Mets sweep a 5-game series from the Braves. The Braves World Series odds were down to like 8-1. Now they're up to 13-1 because now it looks like they're almost certainly going to have to go through that wild card round. So it's been a monumental week.
Yeah, and the Dodgers swept the Padres. They were undefeated too. They covered every run line for the week. I don't think I'd ever seen that before. I was like, dang, it's just unbelievable. Yeah, the Dodgers, Mets, and even my Cardinals were just really made statements. I feel like, you know, after the trade deadline, you know, they came out and played really strong, established themselves as the favorites in their respective divisions. And so yeah, it's gonna be wild. It's gonna be wild to see who can get those last few playoff spots, because the way it's looking now, the Brewers might be on the outside looking in. They're kind of collapsing.
If you look at this list, the Dodgers and Mets are all but in. I mean, that would have to be historical to get them not in. So, and the Braves, look, the last time we did this, the Braves were not even on the board. Now they're minus 4,000 after losing 5 in a row. They're almost certainly going to get in. The team I look at is, and you can by the way, you can bet the no on all of these. You can bet the not to make the playoffs at a lower price, obviously. But the Padres, they've only got I think it's a 1-game lead on the Phillies for the last wild card spot, and then like a 2.5-game lead on the Brewers.
So the that's Padres, all Juan Soto there.
They made a big move, but Jim, they're not a sure thing to get in.
Not at all. I don't think they are at all. And honestly, I don't like them when they get in. I wouldn't, you know, people were trying to jump the gun. There were rumors about the Juan Soto trade before it happened, and people were trying to jump the gun and bet money on the World Series. I'm like, I still don't think the Padres are a great bet, even with Juan Soto. I mean, baseball is so much different than a lot of other sports, because to me, one player doesn't always make the difference. I mean, you're not talking about a team that was devoid of talent in the first place, but they have so many. They're just weird. I don't get a good vibe from the Padres. I don't think they're going to make a big push. I will say this while Spencer's on the air, and I'm not just saying this. Lord knows, being a Cubs fan, I don't have a lot of love for the Cardinals, but I will say this: 10 times out of 10, I'm taking Cardinals over Brewers. Please, you can knock those guys out of the playoffs. That'd be wonderful.
Well, this is a pretty clear-cut NL race. I mean, of these, this is 8 teams listed on this page. 6 of them are going to make it. The Giants are the long shot, so 6 of the other 7 will make it. That's why
there's no value here, really.
I will say this, though. The Padres, the no is plus 400. So a 4-1 shot on them not to make the playoffs. If there's any value, maybe a little bit.
Look out for the Phillies. If they catch fire a little bit in the last part of the season, and Bryce Harper comes back and can be Bryce Harper again, they can make some noise. I'd be scared of the Philly Bombers a little bit. I mean, those dudes can hit. And so, I mean, if they get in the playoffs and the way Aaron Nola's pitching right now, you know, that might be a little value for the World Series, or maybe NL Pennant or something like that. Just put a few bucks on it.
Yeah, they're at 40-1 right now. I was thinking their odds, they were on a 5-game winning streak. But yeah, their odds are still at 40-1. So they're one I'd say, if you're going to bet them now. Because with Wheeler and Nola, they've got solid pitching to go with their stacked lineup.
And Bryce Harper should be back in the next 2-3 weeks, Spencer?
I think beginning of September, they say.
It's not, their lineups are not really stacked right now. But if they could get Harper back, then it's a different story. And then they could really be a legit contender at that point.
Just in time for the Dairy Bombs playoffs.
we don't have the World Series odds up here today, except the Phillies at 40-1. You get a better number on them than the Mariners, 35-1. The Cardinals, 28-1. Everybody else, I think it's pretty clear why they have a better number. But same number as the Rays and the White Sox and the Brewers. I mean, yeah, I like the Phillies better than any of those teams. I really thought coming into the year they would have a problem with defense and their bullpen. And so far, that has not hurt them that much. I think that's what's keeping them from being great. But
I had a future on them at 28-1 before the season, and I may go put another $10 on it just for the heck of it. I mean, just maybe the Phillies will be my team to root for in the postseason. Who knows?
Now, this is what I was going to say about the Padres, Jim, when we're still on the National League. The thing about they added Juan Soto and Josh Bell. And they're going to get Fernando Tatis Jr. back. And the first four in that lineup, you have to throw in Manny Machado to those three guys, is fearsome. It's fearsome.
Sure.
It is. There's no doubt about it.
I agree.
But when you have those innings, let's say it's 3-3 in the eighth inning of a playoff game, and they're sending up Jake Cronenworth, Austin Nola,
That's right.
and Jurickson Profar to the plate. Like, their lineup does not have the depth that most other playoff teams do, where you 5, 6, 7 come up in that order, and you go, okay, good relief pitcher ought to be able to shut these guys down. And can they get the run that they need in a close playoff game? I don't know.
I agree wholeheartedly with that. I just don't, and another thing, everybody talks about Tatis is coming back. You got to temper your enthusiasm. I don't think you're going to see the Fernando Tatis that we saw that's on the cover of MLB The Show. I mean, you're going to see a great player, but I mean, temper your enthusiasm. He's probably not coming back for another couple of weeks. How long is it going to take him to get into shape? And will he be the Tatis of old by the time they get to October? If they make it in October, I don't know.
Got to have the timing.
Yeah.
Got to have the timing when you're a hitter. American League, real quick before we go, Yankees and Astros are the teams that are all but in. Throw the Blue Jays on that list too. I think, I don't know, minus 1,300, no value there, obviously, but they're probably 90+% to make the playoffs. And after that, this is a lot more wide open than the National League is. There's still teams all the way down to the Orioles at the bottom of your screen, to where if they rip off a 9 out of 10, they're right there in this wild card race.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see like the Orioles or the Red Sox really doing it though, because of the division's so tough. But it is possible. Definitely more options there in the AL, or the AL Central race is really interesting. I'm thinking the Twins, I like what they did at the deadline, adding Tyler Mahle and the bullpen reinforcement. So I'm thinking they can eke out the White Sox. But, I mean, the White Sox have a lot of talent, so I wouldn't count them out either. And then the Guardians have good pitching. So I'll probably go with the Twins if I had to pick. So I think there is a little bit of value there with the Twins at minus 115. But, yeah, it's just a lot of unpredictability here. And then we saw the Yankees this weekend had chinks in their armor.
Yeah, the Yankees did not look good. I think they'll be fine, clearly, to win the division and get the bye. But it is interesting, Spencer, you bring up those Central teams. One of those three has to make it. One of those three, and it could be more than one, but one of those three will win the division. So that's where my eyes went to immediately as well.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be more than one. And I'm with Spencer. I kind of like the Twins, and the Guardians actually my second choice. The White Sox have not been consistent enough for me to think they're going to be able to pull something off. Although they have got themselves back in contention, they weren't there for a while.
Yeah, you got too much talent not to. I'd be scared if I was a Twins or Guardians fan. And as a Mariners fan, I may just go bet Mariners to miss the playoffs plus 340
man, come on,
put some armor on my heart, man, because it's been 21 long years. They got to make it now.
Julio will be back. It'll be all fine.
Julio back this week.
There you go.
In fact, Yankees-Mariners this week, starting tonight, so that'll be interesting, too, to see if the Yankees far away from home can kind of stop that slide.
So if the M's play in the playoffs in Houston, you're going to make the trip, I guess.
Oh, I'll walk if I have to, man. 21. I was a senior in high school.
You have to vlog it.
Sounds like a bet.NOLA.com crew trip.
Road trip.
Yeah,
I was a senior in high school. The last time the Mariners were in the playoffs, we used to have to. My high school soccer team, we used to have to bus down to this area.
A senior in high school, then?
I was a senior in high school in fall of 2001. And we used to have to take the bus up to this little town that was like 15 miles north of Albuquerque, where they had this just beautiful soccer complex. So we played all of our games up there. And I had a little pocket TV. This is before the days of streaming.
I remember.
And the little pocket TV,
Sony
you pull the
pocket
antenna up, you could tune into the big four: Fox, CBS, NBC, ABC. Playoff game would be on. Boy, I would sit there and watch that Mariners playoff game on my way up. And they have not been – the freaking era of pocket TVs was the last time they were in the playoffs. So, come on, boys. Come on, boys. Got to make it. Longest drought in professional sports.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got to remember, until 2009, I mean, my favorite teams had done squat. So Saints had never won it, and the Cubs hadn't won it since 1908. So I think that was a little before pocket TVs. So
you're saying there's still time in my life for this to turn around?
Yeah, when it happens, it'll be all worth it.
All right. I like that.
I mean, Spencer's spoiled. The Cardinals win like every third or fourth year. So
it's been a little while now with us, man. It's been over 10 years. Everyone assumes we always win, but yeah, it's been getting a little drought. We need to shake back.
Well, Pujols will finish his career in style. He'll hit a grand slam in Game 7 of the World Series, and
oh my gosh,
boy, would that be nostalgic? Oh my god,
beat the Mariners in Game 7.
I admit I was spoiled as a youngin. You know, growing up with the Cardinals that won 2 rings in the Saints. So I was like, man, this is fun. We're gonna just keep this up, right? But it's been, you know, reality set in here. You know, it's been over a decade now, so hopefully we can get some more.
I'm maybe too young to complain about Spencer calling himself a youngin. Referring to himself as a youngin before now. But Jim, I think you could probably say you're still a youngin.
I just told you I saw Grease in the theater. And nobody, and there's probably, if of the 1,000 people that tuned in at some point today, there's probably 20 people who know who Roger Mosley is, and I'm one of them. So there you go.
I heard the name, but I got to admit,
it was TC on Magnum PI.
Yeah. All right, let's do final thoughts. Our hour's almost up here on Bayou Bets. Spencer the Guru, your final thought for this Monday.
All right, yeah, I'll go with NASCAR again. I like to shout out NASCAR. The race yesterday was pretty interesting. You know, the 15th different winner happened. You know, Kevin Harvick broke through, which I was happy about because he was one of my Fast 5 picks.
You called that, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, yeah. So he took the lead there at the end. I was like, let's freaking go, man. I was so happy. And then the crazy thing was, like, Bubba Wallace, the second place driver, he nearly had won it, and he was also a driver who had yet to win. So if Harvick would have had something happen, Bubba would have been the 15th. So it's just unbelievable. I've never seen a NASCAR season like this where it's just so unpredictable. Because I mean, for a while there, I was kind of in a slump as far as getting the winner, but lately, I think I've now got 3 out of the past 4. So yeah, it's been fun keeping up with the old NASCARs.
And by the way, the other weekend happening, Tom Kim might be the next new big name in golf because that guy was unbelievable at the Wyndham Championship. He quadruple bogey, he had a snowman on the first hole of the tournament, and then finished 20 under.
Another 5-figure job for Uncle Big Nick.
Woo! That guy was hot. I had him in a DraftKings lineup and made $30.
Yeah.
So I'll claim that. But yeah, I had a withdrawal that cost me a 6 out of 6. Anyway, you don't want to hear my sob story. Jim Derry, your final thought.
Oh, well, I'll give a sob story. That'll be my final thought. It's been an absolutely brutal few weeks of betting, and it goes to show that, I mean, look, I kind of felt it, so I really haven't put a lot on the line these last. I've focused most of my my betting money towards futures, so I haven't bet a whole lot I haven't bet nearly as much in golf as I normally would bet. I haven't bet hardly any baseball, just a little bit here and there, but I've pretty much lost everything I bet in. You know, I'm card dead in poker for a month. I get a brutal second place finish in golf this week that would have netted me like $12.50 off of a $7 bet, and I'm not talking about $12.50. So you just got to fight through them. You fight through them, and we've seen in daily best bets. The last time we were in about this position, we went on about a 6-week heater, and we got our overall number in the positive. So that's what we have Spencer here for. He's going to get us back in the black now that he's full time, and give him a little cheerio. But you got to fight through it, and I think part of it is because I've been spent so much time with these. It's no coincidence that I've stunk in bets while I'm spending all this time looking at NFL futures. So I guess my focus has been elsewhere. And we go to the AFC North tomorrow.
Shows you the value of research. But check out those AFC North previews. Baltimore Ravens kicking it off tomorrow with the betting preview in the morning, the fantasy preview in the afternoon. My final thought is the Jameis Winston injury or tweak or whatever you want to call it. I think the way you react to it, because you see everything on Twitter from, oh my God, the season is over, to, he'll be fine, he'll be back out there tomorrow. It tells you a lot about the kind of personality you have, right? Yeah. Are you a glass half full fan or a glass half empty fan? I happen to think he's going to be fine. I think it's time to take a deep breath. Maybe he misses a day or two of camp by Thursday. When we're talking back here at 4 o'clock, Jameis will be back out there. So until then, for Spencer the Guru and Jim Derry, I'm Zach Ewing. Thanks for watching Bayou Bets.